My physical TBR is a tad absurd, and I think the reason for this is because there are a lot of books that I bought in like the beginning of my journey that don't necessarily appeal to me as much anymore, but I still have hope that I could love them. I decided for my August TBR this month I wanted to be a little experimental and potentially read books that are kind of out of my comfort zone. So this month I'm letting a random number generator pick my TBR for August. I am only going to let it pick 5 books because I do want to have like some options for myself. I'm hoping I get some that are on Kindle Unlimited so that it's a little bit easier for me to read them all, but we are going to go for it. We're actually going to start by counting my physical TBR because I don't actually know how many books are on it, but I know it's a lot. So I'm gonna start counting from up here all the way to my indie shelf over here and my ARC shelf. Yeah, and then we're gonna let a random number generator pick my books. So let's start counting. So it actually wasn't as bad as I thought. 159 books on my physical TBR. It's really not that bad. So my plan of attack is I'm going to use a random number generator 5 times, and it's going to give me numbers 1 through 159. And I'm going to count as I did the exact same way until I get to that number. And then those are the books that I'm going to have to read in August. If I do get a book that's like a part of a series, I will just do like the most recent book in the series that I'm at, if that makes sense. Like if I accidentally pick Kingdom of Ash, then I have to read Crown of Midnight. That's how I'm going to do this. I'm going to do the random number generator, and then I'll come back and we'll go over it. Okay, so we are done. The first number I drew was 130. So I do believe that's going to put me on the indie shelf. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm going to count backwards from 159 instead of going from 1 to 130 because that doesn't really make sense. So let me go do that and I'll come back with book 130. Book 130 was The Roads We Take by Christy K. Lee. This was an indie read that got sent to me, so I'm actually very excited for this. I believe it's like a historical fiction type of deal, and I've actually heard really good things from the peers that I have that have read this. That's book number 1. The next number I drew was 26, so I know it's going to be on this shelf. It's going to be a fantasy, I'm pretty sure. This was actually really good luck. It ended up being A Fire in the Flesh by Jennifer L. Armentrout, which is the 3rd book in the Flesh and Fire series, which I love this series, and I got sent this book when it came out, and recently got sent the last book. I got the like limited print edition, and I really want to read this, so I have to read this. So it kind of worked out, although this is quite daunting because it's a very long book. So I'm a little bit nervous to try and read that this month, but we are gonna try. We're gonna do it. Funny enough, the next number was 25, so really going back 1, which ended up being Never by Jessa Hastings, which is kind of like a bit out there for me. I'm not used to this type of fantasy like retelling. The only retelling I ever tried to read was Hooked, and I really didn't like it, and it happened to be a Peter Pan retelling. But I've also never read a Jessa Hastings book, and I heard a lot of mixed things about this one when it came out, but I am really excited for it. I was excited for it when I bought it, so I don't know how I didn't read it. Now it's time. We're gonna read it. The next number was 124, which I don't think, it might be on the indie shelf. I'm not sure, but I'm gonna count and we'll find out what the next book is. My friend Maggie's gonna be really happy about this one. It ended up being Wish You Were Here by Jodi Picoult. She loves Jodi Picoult, and she keeps telling me that I need to read a Jodi Picoult book, but I don't know why. Whenever I think about Jodi Picoult, I just think about like a book my mom would have read when she was like 24, but I've also never read a book by her, so I don't know. I'm excited to read this. I do think this is gonna be like a sad book, which is okay. I think sometimes you need that. And the last number was 144, which I know for sure is gonna be on the indie shelf. Let me go pick that up and I'll show you what it is. It's looking like this is gonna be a fantasy month. This was Born of Starlight by Mariette K, which I got in like a book box that I got, and it has a little cute little art print in it. I got a book box a little while ago, and this was in it along with The Locked Door by Frida McFadden. And I wasn't sure if I was ever gonna get to this because I literally have never heard of it at all, and I really don't know what it's about. So hopefully it's good. I don't know. So let's quickly run over the final TBR. We have Born of Starlight by Mariette K, Wish You Were Here by Jodi Picoult, Never by Jessa Hastings, A Fire in the Flesh by Jennifer L. Armentrout, and The Roads We Take by Christy K. Lee. We have quite the selection, so I'm pretty excited. Lots of fantasy, which not usually the summer vibe, but that's why I have a couple picks for myself. So there are a couple books on the TBR that I did forget to mention that I feel like I should probably mention in this video. One is that I'm currently reading the audiobook for Reckless by Lauren Roberts, which I'm loving, by the way. People really made me think I was gonna hate it, but it's so good. I'm also still reading The Last Letter by Rebecca Yarros, which I've been reading for 2 months now. So who knows if that's, it might just be a soft DNF. I don't know. I just don't know if I'm in the mood for it. I don't feel like crying. I'm also reading Till Death Do Us Part by Lori Elizabeth Flynn. And that one I'm really liking, but it is, for some reason it's taking me a little while to get through that one, but it is going to be in a video soon, so I want to get that done. And then lastly, I am reading Rebel Witch by Kristen Ciccarelli, which is the sequel to The Crimson Moth. This is an arc, so it is not out yet, and it will probably, I don't know when it comes out, I'll make sure to put that here somewhere, but that one is really good too. I can't really tell you very much about that because it's an arc, but if you liked The Crimson Moth, you're gonna like this one. And there are 2 other books that like I personally want to pick up that I can think of off the top of my head. The first one is The Au Pair Affair by Tessa Bailey because I loved Fangirl Down so much. Oh, what is my hair doing right now? I don't know. We're not gonna talk about it. I loved Fangirl Down a lot, so I just know I'm gonna love this. So I'd love to get to it. And then also In the Lives of Puppets by TJ Klune, because I did start a buddy read with this on Storygraph with a couple of friends and haven't picked it up yet. And they're reading it and I am not. So in an ideal world, I do also get to that. This is Future Haley. I did finish my August TBR and July wrap-up video a long time ago and meant to upload them as separate videos, but then waited so long to edit and upload that I'm just going to combine them to be a July wrap-up and an August TBR video, because otherwise my August TBR is not going to go up until the end of August. So you get both. June was a strange reading month for me because I had one day where I read 3 books in one day, but I still somehow only managed to read, I think, 7 books in the month of July. Did I say June before? I might have. So I read 7 books in the month of July. I did start quite a few others. So let's go through the books that I read and what I thought about them. And I'm going to try to make this relatively quick. I feel like there was nothing super memorable about July, besides the reading 3 books in one day, which I have a video on. So if you haven't seen that, make sure to go watch it. And I suppose it only makes sense to go through those 3 books first. So first of all, we have Do You Remember by Frida McFadden. This was a thriller book about a woman who basically wakes up with no memory. She has no idea really anything about herself or what happened, and people are kind of just like filling her head with things that happened to her. She isn't sure what's real and what's not. I didn't guess the plot twist. I honestly don't remember. I don't remember what happened. So that should tell you that like it's not a super memorable book. I barely remember really what happened or if I guessed it or not. I will have to rewatch my own video, I think. I gave it 4 stars, but like purely from vibes and enjoyment. That's really all I look for. Then we also read Borrow My Heart by Casey West. This was just like a cute YA book about a girl who basically pretends to be this guy's catfish because he comes into a coffee shop that she's at and he's waiting for a blind date that he's like never seen. He's just been talking to her online, and it's very clear that this blind date is never going to show up. She pretends to be that person so that he is not embarrassed. Then it kind of just goes too far. And it's very weird. And I will say that there's one major plot hole in this that like, I'm usually not that bad with plot holes. Like I can handle them. They don't bug me too much. They don't make or break it for me. But there's like one major thing in this that you never get answers to. And I feel like it kind of bugs me just a little bit. I did give it 3 stars. It was just cute. It was just fun. But it does read quite young. And lastly, in that challenge, we did Every Summer After by Carly Fortune. This surprised me so much. I've heard nothing but like bad things about this, and I loved it. I gave it 4.5 stars, but really, I feel like it could have been a 5 because I read it like I said in like a couple of hours, and I loved it. And I've thought about this book quite a lot since then. It makes me want to reread Meet Me at the Lake because I did read it on audio and didn't love it. So I'm wondering if I would have loved it if I read it physically. And then I also want to read Carly Fortune's most recent book. And I just loved that it's like based in Canada and all her books are. And this one specifically is based in like an area in which I'm quite familiar with. So it was kind of fun to be able to actually picture things. And when she talks about like Tim Hortons, like I actually know what she's talking about. I did also finish Two Twisted Crowns in that video. I had started it in June but finished it, and I really liked this one. I liked this one a lot more than One Dark Window. I just found like some of the poetic parts of One Dark Window were just like a little bit too much for me, whereas this kind of like felt a lot more straightforward, which I appreciated. Like in a fantasy, I feel like you don't need to add confusingness by putting random poems in it, because fantasy can already be a little bit intense and a little bit confusing for me and my brain. I really like this. I gave this 4.5 stars. It was a really good time, and I definitely recommend the duology in general just to read this. I also read Bye Baby by Carola Lovering, and a lot of these books I actually read because I'm trying to improve my NetGalley ratio this year. I'm basically trying to get all my NetGalley books read, so this was one of them that I've had for a very long time that I did not read, and I'm actually mad that I waited so long. I gave this 4.25 stars. I loved this thriller. I thought it was really, really fun. Just like interesting. I loved getting like the point of views that we got. You kind of get to see like a different side of all the characters from each point of view. Like you get to see one person's point of view of a character, but then you get that character's point of view and you get to see their point of view on themselves. And it's just, it was a really cool, unique twist. And I loved like the mix of like, the past and present, especially with the present being, you know, more of like an influencer and like social media vibe. Like, I don't know. I really liked it. I thought it was super cool. What I will say about it is that there was no like major plot twist to me. Like I didn't feel like it was anything jaw-dropping, but it was a really entertaining read. This one's about two women who are best friends, like growing up, but now one of them is like a social media influencer and no longer really like associates with her childhood best friend. They've drifted apart in adulthood, and all of a sudden, the influencer girl, she's kind of like a mom blogger almost. She is throwing a party and her baby disappears. That's all I'm gonna tell you, but it's a cool book. I also read Keep It in the Family by John Mars. I read this for a video that's about to come out, and it is trying to find a 5-star thriller. This book was, I think I gave this one 4 stars. I love John Mars. I love his like Black Mirror feelings to his books. This one was just like kind of weird, and I think I expected a much bigger plot twist than what I got, which is why it didn't end up being anything major for me and why it didn't end up being a 5-star, but I still had a really good time reading it, but it is quite dark. Like it is a bit on the darker side, even for him. And I honestly don't really know how to describe it to you without giving things away, so I'm not going to. I did read the audiobook for Leather and Lark by Bryn Weaver, and I can tell you that my boyfriend and I both listened to this on audio. I finished it myself, but we listened to majority of it together, and he even really, really enjoyed this. It was a hilarious book. I gave this, I think, 4.5 stars. It was honestly, in my opinion, superior to Butcher and Blackbird. I know a lot of people were disappointed by this one, but I thought this was way better. I thought we got way more character depth than in Butcher and Blackbird, and realistically, it was more funny to me, and the gore was better, and like I just found it was just overall a better book. I listened to both of them on audio. Everything about this was better for me, personally. I also started Reckless, but I don't have a review for you yet because I haven't finished it, but I'm really, really liking it so far. As well as Rebel Witch by Kristen Ciccarelli, which is the sequel to The Crimson Moth. And finally, I also started Till Death Do Us Part by Lori Elizabeth Flynn, and I'm only about halfway through it. I'm really liking it, so I don't know why it's taking me so long, but it is like a slower paced book, so that's probably why. Really, I felt like July was not the best month, but I also did move. So that's a big one. I started a new job full-time, and I also went on a week trip to Florida. So, I mean, I really didn't do too bad for the time that I really did have to read. But I also find I haven't been like going out of my way to read lately, so I'm hoping to improve that. If I were to break it down and say which book was my favorite in July, I would say probably Every Summer After by Carly Fortune. If you've been hesitant to read this based on other people's reviews, then I think you should definitely try to look past that and just go for it, because this was a stunning read. I loved the imagery, I loved the setting. Everything about this was so good. Don't sell it short, because it is much better than what people say it is. And if I were to pick a least favorite book, I would probably say Borrow My Heart by Casey West, which is kind of a good thing because I didn't really dislike this book. Like, it wasn't bad, it just, nothing special. Like, it was very much like a young read. So that's why. And I honestly didn't have any bad reads in July. Almost never happens. I almost never get like a month where I just have nothing that I didn't enjoy. So realistically, I feel like it was a good reading month in terms of quality. So even though it wasn't the best in quantity, it was good in quality. I think August will be a better month, but I'm a little bit worried about sticking my TBR, which if you haven't seen my August TBR yet, make sure to go watch that. It has been posted. I hope everybody had an amazing July. Let me know what your favorite book of July was. Yeah, make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.